This podcast is co-created and co-produced by Food Allergy Institute and the 12 Company. Listeners should know that the podcast host, Lesley-Anne Stone, is not a physician nor a licensed medical professional, and the purpose of this podcast is strictly limited to storytelling. Any content shared within the podcast is not intended to be medical advice and should not be used for diagnosis or treatment purposes. All listeners are urged to consult their healthcare providers. The creators, hosts, and guests of this podcast are not liable for any decisions or actions taken by any persons who claim to rely upon the content of this podcast.
What should we call this episode?
The day Lesley-Anne cussed me out.
No!
It's clickbaity.
Hi, I'm Lesley-Anne Stone, and this is Resilience and Hope, a food allergy podcast. Thank you so much for joining. I have a very, very, very special guest with us today, someone who is very near and dear to my heart. Her name is Shani Bernard. Shani was actually our first nanny and babysitter. We met Shani when Sam was 3 months old. And I'm going to say, please hold your judgment when I say I hired a nanny. I want to pause and say that I hired a nanny because I was launching my business at the time. And my husband, Dave, was working a full-time job with demanding hours. And I had no family where we were living in Los Angeles, and I needed childcare. I needed childcare as I was launching my business and working. And I was so fortunate enough to meet Shani. Shani is, as my late mother, God rest her soul, calls Shani an angel. And she is an angel, which you'll learn as we continue in this conversation. Shani Bernard is no longer a nanny and a caretaker. I met her at a point of life where she just graduated college, was coming to LA to pursue a music career. She is a musician. She is a performer. She's a songwriter. She is a producer. She is a YouTuber. She has her own podcast. She also comes from a very musical family, a well-known family. She comes from quite the pedigree. She is Donna Summer's niece, and her mother, Mary Gaines Bernard, was Donna Summer's backup singer. And Shani, we could do a whole series about Shani and Shani's family, but we're not. We're going to talk about Sam. But when I met Shani, we met through care.com. And when I interviewed Shani, I remember I was in my garage and we had the staircase that was coming up into the main area of our house. And I was coming from the garage to get water because I knew she was coming to meet us for an interview, and like rays of light coming from her. Like when I was coming up and I saw her in a doorway, she was in this cute little dress and she just brought so much happiness and joy without even saying hello, just into my life. And I knew the moment I met her that this was the person I prayed for to come and help me with my son. And I was specifically looking for somebody who could also mentor me. I'm very big into having mentors in my life. I think mentors are everything. I needed someone to help me because, again, I didn't have family in town and I was a first-time mom and I was working and I needed somebody to coach me and to help me. And Shani was that person. She has so much experience in caretaking. She also is a postpartum doula. I should have led with that too. So she was also very helpful with me having a newborn son. So Shani worked for us for the first year, and we're going to go into a little bit of our story, how we worked together for the first year. So ladies and gentlemen, Shani Bernard. Yay!
I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so happy you're here. Thank you so much. So you remember that first day meeting me?
I do remember that first day, actually. I actually remember what I was wearing, too. It was like a little pink skirt dress that I had sewn myself.
You sewed that?
Yeah, and I was like, and I loved it. So sometimes I wore it as a skirt, and sometimes I wore it as a dress, like up like this or whatever. And I was wearing that day. It was like my lucky dress.
Oh.
And I still have it.
Oh.
But yeah, I do remember that. I remember walking in and I remember seeing Sam in the little like bassinet thing. And I always remember your energy when I walked in because you were very like matter of fact, but very friendly, like super friendly. And you talk so fast. You're like, come on, come on, you know, and you were like, okay, this is what it, and the thing that I loved when I met you was that you were very direct. Like you were so clear with like what your wants and needs and everything were. And for me, clarity is like safety. And I love it. And since I've worked for so many families and some of them, they'll say ambiguous things that you don't know exactly what they're hiring you for. But you were like, this is what I want. This is what it is. You're just taking care of the baby. You're not cleaning my whole house. And I was like, done. Fantastic.
No, I just needed someone to take care of Sam when I was working.
Yes.
I wasn't taking a nap. I wasn't going shopping. I was working, and I was working from home before the pandemic. I launched my business from my house.
It was, I think we both like met at like a transition time for the both of us. And so I feel like we both got each other through like a moment in our lives. And I used to always tell myself, like, when I was trying to do businessy things, I'd be like, what would Lesley-Anne do? I used to say that all the time because you were just you were just so with it. You were doing like marketing and you'd be like, this is what we're doing, Shani. Boom, bam, 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 bam. And I'm like, okay, yeah. You know, but I remember meeting you and Dave and then I remember seeing Sam and I remember sitting there because I was like, I want to hold him. Like in my head, I was like, oh, I want to hold him. Like he's just so yummy. I want to hold him. So finally I was like, can I hold him? And you were like, yeah, here you go. You know,
it was actually a test. It was a test that I wanted to see if you asked to hold the baby. Because if you did not ask to hold the baby, there's something wrong. Yeah. Coming into interview to be a caretaker for the baby. Yeah. So it was actually a test, which obviously you passed.
It's a good test because in my mind, like, I mean, whenever I say baby, I'm like, give me the baby. Like,
I get it.
That's just how I feel. Like,
I get it.
You know, I was on the plane recently and the lady sitting next to me had her baby and he was like super fussy and stuff like that. And you feel weird. You want to be like, you know, like I hold the baby, but post-COVID, I feel like it's hard to offer that, you know. So finally I just said, hey, if you're comfortable with it and you need a break, and she was like, here you go. Mm-hmm. You know, and then he sat and he chilled with me for a while and he just looked at me and he's just like, and he fell asleep. And it was like super fun. I like that. I don't plan to have children in this life, and so I really enjoy the fact that I can support other people who have children. Like that just makes me happy, you know.
Well, you're amazing at it. You taught me a lot. But let's get down to let's just go right into it.
Okay, let's do it.
So you were our nanny for the first year of Sam's life.
Yes.
And I was in a lot of denial because Sam had a rash and these weird symptoms and eczema. Mm-hmm. And there were some diaper issues too. We're not going to go into details. But I was in a lot of denial because nobody wants to say, I think there's something wrong with my child. Nobody wants to hear it. There's an abnormality.
Okay. So
go into it.
Okay. So I've worked with a lot of families and, some moms are type A moms. They want to control the whole picture. And Sam was like your first baby. And I remember you came from like a high, like New York job where, you know, like you had to be boss lady. And so when you came, you had a baby and you wanted to be boss lady of the situation. This is my baby. This is what the doctor says to do. They say do X, Y, Z. So this is how I'm going to do it. And that data makes you comfortable when it comes to having a child. But children are not like, you know, they don't follow just a linear line of what works for them. There's a lot of ebb and flow of figuring them out specifically. So I definitely remember at that time, Sam, he had eczema in all of his joints. He had it in his neck, like his neck roll, in his arms, in between his wrists, and everything else. And so I grew up with eczema like all over my body. I lost the pigment in my face. Like in middle school, I had just like white circles on my face. So I was very familiar with eczema and very familiar with like the triggers and things that would help it. And so when I saw Sam with that, I was like, well, there's really only like probably two options for what is giving him this eczema. It was either like the laundry detergent that his like onesies were washed in, or he was consuming it. Those are like,
I used free and clear. Everything was free and clear.
Everything was free and clear. So for me, I was like, it's got to be the only thing that he eats, which it was the formula. And so that was pretty much my thing. I was like, oh, I remember sitting and thinking like, oh, I got to tell her we got to change this formula. and I didn't want to tell you at all. I was just like, because I mean, I've been around long enough to know that anything when it comes to someone's child, it can be sensitive. And you don't want to be the one to tell like a mom like something that she might have missed, you know? So I remember just like, it took me a long time to say something but I just, in my heart was like, he's suffering. Like, I remember how I suffered with eczema, like the way it itches so badly. And so he was so little though, like it's hard to tell that he's suffering, but like in my mind, I'm like, he's got to be so itchy.
And he always had it.
Yeah. And like it started off a little bit and then it started going to like it just started going to different joints and stuff. And then I remember like if you if you pulled like a little fat rolls, it was getting a little red in there, you know? And so, yeah, I remember just thinking like, okay, I got to tell her. And I was trying to like work up the nerve to tell you. And I told you like at the worst possible time.
You told me at a bad time.
The worst. I mean, I picked the worst possible time. I'm not going to lie to you.
And you were nervous.
And I was so nervous. I was so nervous. I was kind of like shaking a little bit. And you had like a big meeting, I
was out the door.
Yeah, she was about to walk out the door. And I was just like, do it, Johnny, do it. So like right before you walked out the door, I was like, I think we got to change his formula because I think it's causing all the things on his body and, you know, or whatever. And okay, bye. And and then you were like, I remember exactly, but you were like, I'm his mother. I know what is best for my son. And I was like, I know. I'm sorry.
So bad. I feel so bad.
And then you left for the meeting, and I was like, I was just like, so I was there, and I'm like, I'm getting fired. I am getting fired. It's happening. But I'm also sensitive, like as an individual. Like it doesn't take much for me to think I'm getting fired. And so, but one thing I actually really loved about that whole exchange was when you came back in. I was in the playroom and there's like the kitchen was on the other side of a wall, but there's like that picture hole. Yes. And you're just the right height to it's almost like a Muppet, like you're just the right height when you walked in to your face to fit in that picture hole. And I remember this. You walked in straight away. You didn't look at me right away, and you were like, "I'm sorry." Let's talk about this. Let's figure out like what the next things are. And so then we had this like cry session of I was like, no, I'm sorry. You're like, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. And then from there you were like, okay, I'm going to call his doctor and we're going to figure something out. And so that's kind of like, that's what happened.
Yeah. And I'm so grateful.
Yeah.
I remember because we were just thrown on the Aquaphor, on the eczema, whatever. And I didn't know anybody doing a milk-based alternative for their baby. So I called the pediatrician. My nanny thinks, and she knows things, and she thinks, and the pediatrician's like, all right, let's try, an enriched rice milk or an enriched soy milk, or and I was like, oh, okay, and. Yeah, I called that day.
Yeah,
I called that day
because like the next day you had already gotten the milk and everything. You're like, okay, this is the new protocol for him. We're gonna try this, and we switched him to that, and the eczema cleared up. I remember like all of it slowly like going away, and I was like, this is fantastic. But like, I loved it. I loved that the next day you had already made the shift.
Gotta move. Gotta move.
That's what I've always like envied about you and watched you and admired about you, is that you make decisions quickly. And like, I'm a hem and har. I'm like, like you make them quickly and you make smart decisions and, you weigh fast. And so anyway, I just thought it was dope. I always thought you as a mom was dope because you always had like this, like, what's best for my kid? Like, what's best for my kid mentality? Okay, this is what it is. It's not necessarily what I would do. And it's not necessarily like the most comfortable, but I'm going to do this for my kid.
Thank you.
And so like, I always admired that.
Thank you. That's means a lot. Thank you for saying that.
And also you said something earlier. You said something about like, don't judge me because I had a nanny. And that kind of hit my heart in a way because like so in my family, I've come from a big family. Right. So when my parents were touring and if we couldn't go on tour, I was watched by my aunts, my grandmother, my oldest sister, anybody else. you are meant to have so much support when you have a baby. The idea that you were supposed to do it alone, I think anybody raising their own child is cruel and unusual punishment. You should not be just alone with your kid, and your kid shouldn't just be like alone with you, you know? And so like, me as a nanny is just like the grandmother coming in, like you're hiring like an auntie. Do you know what I mean? And that's kind of how I feel when I nanny. I feel like an auntie. Like that's exactly what I would do with my own nieces and nephews.
You are like you are. You say auntie. In New Jersey, we would say aunt. Aunt. But you are very much so. I mean, still the relationship with my kids and the impact that you've had on my kids' life.
Oh, I love them.
I mean, Sam is a drummer now. He's in 3 bands in middle school because you brought that drum over, and you guys because you were writing music at the time. You wrote 2 songs with Sam because
I loved writing like
because you made it very clear too. You not in the interview, but once we started to get to know each other, you said, I'm in this transitional, I'm here. I knew you went to school for theater, and I'm a musician, I'm a songwriter. And then you're like, I come from a musical family. I'm like, oh, that's nice. Like, what kind of music? And you're like, it was music in the 70s. I'm like, oh, keep going. And like trying to pull it out. And you're like, Donna Summer's my aunt. I'm like, that's an icon. Your family is iconic. I have seen your family perform at the Hollywood Bowl. I'm like, Shani.
Also, the serendipity was, I remember when I showed up to your house and I was like, you know, my cousin lives like
across the street,
across from you.
Yep.
Like 4 doors down. Like,
and I didn't know because I was always working.
Yeah.
Before Sam, I didn't work from home. I was always out at an office, and I just didn't have time to get to know my neighbors.
It was crazy.
It's just like, it's wild.
And I thought like when I showed up there, I was like, oh, this is serendipity. Like it's a good sign. Like when that happened, I was like, this is a good sign.
I don't believe in coincidences.
Me neither.
It means you're on the right path.
0. Yes. You know? And so like, I was like, oh, okay. This is a nod for you to keep going. Like just keep going. And honestly, so many opportunities came out of me working for you. And I don't even mean that as a direct thing. Like I remember the when I had quit, you asked me, can you stay 1 more week? I have a project and it's done in 1 more week. And I was like, okay, I'm going to stay 1 more week. And I remember walking the street with Sam in that 1 more week. We just taking a walk. I had him on my hip, you know, and this guy came up to me and handed me a book. And he's like, oh, I make book for mixed families. So he thought Sam was mine.
I remember this.
Yeah.
I remember this.
You know, and I didn't correct them because this encounter happened so quickly, but I had been in my car crying the day before, just ugly sobbing because I was trying to market my kids' music and the kids' books and everything. And I literally was sitting in the car and did one of those like ugly cries to God where you're like shaking the steering wheel. And I was just like, I can't do this. I need help. Right. And literally the next day I'm just walking to him. He's like, oh, I make these books for mixed kids. And he handed me a book. And I said, I'm looking for community for like, you know, multicultural stuff. And he's like, oh, we're having a huge mixer tomorrow. Come. And he gave me his card. And then that weekend I went to that mixer and I met like who's my best friend now in LA.
Wow.
Like she and I have been friends since that day. She helped market stuff for me, you know, and I didn't even have to ask her. And so it opened a whole new world. Like if I hadn't just been there.
That's
you know?
wild.
So like there's just a lot of different things that have come just out of that and beautiful things that have come from that.
Yeah. So Shani, when you had food intolerances when you were a kid, how did your mom handle it? Because it was in a time where people really didn't have allergy and intolerance. It wasn't prevalent like today.
Oh my goodness. So I think my mom did the best she could. She used to like make us do things that were like so alternative. Like when I ate cereal, it was with apple juice, but she would try these mono diets to try to pinpoint what we were allergic to. Me and my sister, I have a sister we're like very close in age. We both had eczema. And so she used to have us on very specific diets at a time. She even found like this naturopath doctor who really helped. And then over the years, I actually just figured out that if I went to the ocean, at a young age, I figured out if I went to the ocean would cure my eczema. And it always has. And now actually they create a salt scrub for eczema. That's just salt water.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it's like a salt based. But yeah, I would scratch it as like open as I could, and then I would get in the ocean. It would burn, but the next day everything would be smoothed over. And so that's just the only thing I knew to do. But it was really caused by dairy was a big factor for me. I didn't know this at the time, but I'm super allergic to wheat. not even like gluten, like wheat. And I was eating wheat every day, cream of wheat for breakfast every single day. And so I didn't find that out till I was an adult, that I had a severe like wheat allergy. So she honestly did the best she could. But as soon as we hit middle school, she could not control like what we ate at school anymore. I was eating corn nuts. Anything processed like Doritos would break me out all over. Corn nuts, anything corn would break me out. And so she tried the best she could when we were in elementary. But at a certain point, she can't control us buying stuff from the guy on the corner of the street.
Yeah.
You know? And so at that point, she just used to say, like, listen, it's your body. You have to figure out what you're going to do. And I didn't really figure it out until I got to college and was just kind of fed up. And I also wanted my pigment back in my skin.
Wow.
So, but I still have, I don't know if you can see this here.
I can see it.
That's how I lost the pigment in my face and everything. And this is actually the only thing that's left from
that
time. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, you also, we obviously have stayed in touch.
Yeah.
We are now friends.
Yes.
But when we found out about the program and Sam started the program,
yeah.
I needed somebody to come and help with Casey, because Casey was 9 months at the time.
Yep.
So we could quickly run down to Long Beach and start. And I called you, and I'm just curious, like, when I told you about the program, I told you we were doing this with Sam. I know we're jumping forward here.
I'm with you. I'm
far
with
forward.
you.
What did you think, somebody who has food allergy and food intolerance,
yeah.
and being in our generation, I am older than you, but please, leap of faith, our generation.
Yeah.
What did you think when you heard about the program, knew that we were doing the program, and what do you think of it?
So, okay, I remember when you told me that a program existed, right? I remember feeling jealous, like, for myself, just like sad for myself as a kid, because we didn't have access to anything like that. And having food allergies is like one of the hardest things when you're a kid. Like from going to visit places or people's houses, or having an aunt who doesn't respect the diet that your mom put you on, and so you can't go there anymore because, you know. And I remember like just being excited that it existed, feeling like just sad in general for myself, but also like elated that there was a place that you could go, because I know you, okay? And you need data. You need data. And the Institute was there to give you the data. And they really like gave you a regimen that was like paint by numbers. So like they told you exactly what you needed to do and exactly what you needed to follow. And that's what you needed to hear. And so I knew when that was happening, like, I was like, I'll support this in any way I can, because I was so excited. And I was excited that I knew it was going to be a little bit of a slog to come all the way down, to drive all the way down, and especially having like a new little baby, you know. And so I was retired at that point. I had retired from. I was like, I'll come out of retirement for this, and I actually I really enjoyed it. I think because I think when I was ending nannying, I was kind of burned out, right? I have been doing childcare my whole life, right? Since I was 7 years old, you know? And so there was a part of me that was just wanting to get into my art and get into my craft, you know? And so, but when I got to come back for Casey, it was just like delightful. Like, you know what I mean? Because I wasn't doing it every day. It wasn't my thing. So I just got to like experience it with like a different feeling and a different energy. Right. You know, and to this day, I always remember like laying Casey over my stomach. Like I would lay him over my stomach and he would just conk out, you know, you know? But yeah, I was really excited for you. And I knew that this was going to be like a great thing. And yeah, and I remember when you came back and you told me that Sam had to eat a certain amount of like, I don't know, like the allergen. And you baked these little brown, like brownie biscuit. They were, I don't know what they were. They did not look appetizing whatsoever. They looked a little bit like doggy biscuits. But I was like, you were like, he's got to eat this. And I remember thinking, oh, good Lord, good luck. Like, because Sam was also kind of picky. Yeah, he was. And I knew you were going to have to kind of like shove that down his throat like every day. And you can't really rationalize with a 3-year-old.
Nope.
you know? And so I just remember thinking like, it's going to be a journey. This is a lesson in letting go and losing control. And that is a great lesson for a type A, but a hard lesson also.
It was very hard.
You know, so.
Very hard. It needed a lot of help, which we'll talk about in future episodes. Yeah. More people I had to bring in to the picture. Yeah. But I would like to know your opinion on what would be your advice to people out there who are looking for caretakers of their food allergy children. So somebody was looking for a nanny or a babysitter or a daycare, somebody to come in and their kid does have a food allergy. What's your advice to that parent looking for childcare? Because it's scary. I will tell you, as the parent, it is scary. So I'm curious from you as the caretaker, what's your advice to them?
You know, I don't know if I have the greatest advice, but
what I'm going to add is that it's so interesting how the universe, if you will, put us together, because you had food allergy and food intolerance. I didn't know it. Sam did. I didn't know it. And it all came together at the same time. Like, I didn't look for somebody who had experience with food allergy.
Yeah.
Which is so wild.
Until this moment, when you're saying that, I'm like, yeah, that actually is pretty wild. I didn't really think of it. It is pretty wild. Honestly, when you're looking for someone to watch your child, even if you don't even know they have food allergies yet, you want someone who's very strict on what you have asked them to do and is not going to do things kind of behind your back that you didn't ask for. And I honestly would say that if you have hired somebody and you feel like you actually can't trust them to do the things you say, then it's probably time to find somebody else. And I know that might be easier said than done based on budget or other things. But sometimes you just gotta figure that out, because I think it's incredibly dangerous to have somebody who takes liberties with your kid that you don't, especially when they're like little. I've had parents who let me like the long leash, like I've taken kids to band practice with me with full consent of their parents and stuff. And I've taken them to band practice, school, college classes, all sorts of things. So I would definitely say that trust your intuition. When you meet someone, you really need to feel like you want this person to be somebody watching your kids. You want to feel okay with leaving them alone in your home. And also ask for references. Now, to be fair, we don't all have references. Sometimes we're just getting into it or whatever else. If you don't have a big budget, you may have to be more open to somebody with less references. That's not a bad thing. Like, as a nanny or somebody watching who might watch this, like, your reputation, I think, will precede you with families, and people will recommend you if you are on your game. And for parents, like, look for those recommendations, but also, be willing to, especially if you're working from home, be willing to have somebody come and get to know them and whatever. And also pry. Ask about their families, find out where they're from, show up to their birthday parties. Honestly, that's like a big deal. I really think it is. Like, when you feel invested in your nanny feels invested in you. Also, don't negotiate with your nanny if you actually told me what you were going to pay, like right off the bat. You're like, this is what I'm going to pay. And I was like, great. Sure. I don't like that negotiation. I don't like feeling nitpicked. So don't do that, because your nanny will see every Amazon package that you bring into the house. They will see every Valentino bag. They will, and then they will feel resentful, So always pay them what they want and have a raise in mind already. Don't make them ask for it. So that's how you get a nanny that is invested in your family and will stay for longevity. Honestly, if I was a little like younger in my career, I would have stayed. It was just had to go. I had reached my threshold.
You had to go. You had to do your music.
Yeah,
I did. You had to do your music.
I just felt like time was like getting away from me.
It was time. It was time, and I had to move on with my career and next one business too. It was time for everybody. But I would have kept you forever too. I mean, let's get it. Shani, I have a question for you. Being somebody who caretake for people with food allergies, and now you were a kid with food allergies, how can families and parents better support their food allergy child or others with food allergies?
I love that question, because in my journey, it's felt really othering to have a different diet than the people around me and my family. And so I think it is really important that families get on board for the diet change as a whole unit and not just like that kid, because it's a lonely road. It really just feels really lonely. And you're going to feel lonely at sleepovers. You're going to feel lonely at school. You're going to be that weird kid who can't eat the thing or can't go on that field trip because it's at, it's the M&M factory or something, And so I just think it's really important that if you don't want your kid to feel like the weird kid, then putting them in circumstances where they can just feel normal and regular. And that might mean that if you know that they're going to a party, you might have to like sneak food to that party before they get there, or prep something. You might have to do something like that too. But I think in your own home, you should do as much as you can to make that a safe place for them to exist with everyone else and just feel normal. So yeah, I think food changes are a family affair and not just that kid affair.
Thank you for saying that. I never thought about that. How feeling othered, that's such an interesting way of putting it. And also how it is part of the culture of the house. It's true. We all come together for dinner. We all eat dinner together in my house. And it's true, that moment of coming together and not wanting to be the odd man out.
The odd kid who doesn't get to drink, that has to put the apple juice in their cereal.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. I do want to apologize again for my behavior when you confronted me. I've apologized so many times over in public places too. But I am so horrified. But I was in denial, and nobody wants to hear.
Nobody wants to hear that.
And you were right. We haven't discussed this, but you're also an intuitive, and you have taught me a lot about what it means to be an intuitive through the years, but you intuitively knew what was happening with Sam. And I replay, like we all do those things. Like you're up at night and you're like, why did I do that one thing in that one moment of my life? Like that's in my reel of things. My reaction to you is in your reel. So
you can put it in your funny reel now, because it's one of those things where like I laugh about it. I have a great time laughing about it. I think that it's one of the, I love moments where I get to level up in friendship. And I think you don't get to level up without having a conflict with your friend and then a resolution with your friend. So like that for me, the fact that like it didn't take long. It was like,
but it wasn't a conflict. You were doing something so nice for Sam, and I was not having it.
Yeah, but you are a new mom, and also like the amount of pressure that new moms have is so wild. Like you guys have to be like the most perfectest and make all the most perfectest decisions and everything else with no support and and then like and be criticized. So to me, I already know that it's weighted. Like I already knew, that's why it took me so long, that when I said it would come with weight, and that it's just what it is. So, and he was 3 months old. You were still postpartum. Like the idea that that you get over that postpartum in 3 months is ridiculous to me.
It is ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
So I have never held it. I think it's hilarious. Every time I recall it, I think it's hilarious. So
at least one of us. At least one of those. Well, thank you, Shani.
You're welcome.
Thank you for being here and coming on the show. This is just to bask in your glow. Always your energy.
I feel that way too.
Oh, your energy. I love you so much. Thank you for tuning in to Resilience and Hope, a food allergy podcast. I am Lesley-Anne Stone. Please find us on social media or write to us. We would love to hear from you with any questions or comments you have. Our email address is resilienceandhopepodcast@gmail.com. And before we go, Shani, tell us about your music. Where can we follow you? Where could we listen?
I'm so excited because we are putting out a project really soon. You can find me at Marvelous She. So our band name is Marvelous She. It's spelled Marvelous XE. And you can find us on all platforms under Marvelous XE. That is also my Instagram. You can find me, follow me. I'm really, really friendly. So I write back to everybody who writes to me. And yeah, we create a cinematic electronic rock you feel like you're kind of in a movie. And the project we're putting out now is very immersive, and it's 360 audio. And so it's meant to take you on a beautiful frequency journey. So yeah, look us up and come like rock out with us. And if you are in LA, we do a music night every Friday. It's called The Rehearsal, and you can find us on Instagram at @therehearsal_. We just find local artists from LA to come through and to work on their craft and show what they're working on. So it has that feel kind of like an underground comedy club, where the goal is not for you to come do your most polished work, it's to come work your work. And so that's a lot of fun. I'm having a blast with that.
It's awesome. You're amazing. You're
Thank you.
amazing. I love you.
Thank
you. Thank you. Marvelous she, Shani Bernard. Thank you.
Resilience and Hope podcast, made possible thanks to the support of Food Allergy Institute.